Hi, everyone. It's Tracy from the Fairborn branch of the Greene County Library, here to talk to you today about how to research in the old country. Because at some point in time, just about everybody's genealogy is going to take them to a foreign country, and you need to learn a couple of tricks on how to begin your research over there and get an idea of where to start. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Give me 1 second. There we go. All right. So, researching in the old country. Like I said, at some point in time, just about everyone's research, unless your family is Native American, is going to take you to a different country. And we'll have to learn a couple of tricks to learn how to research in those other places. Now, even though researching in every country is a little bit different, there are some things that are universal no matter what country you're in, be it Russia, Germany, Latin America, Brazil, anywhere like that. There are some basics that you need to know about the area you're researching. First, you need to know some basic history. When did the country start? What was it prior to this? That way you have an idea of what was happening in the country and where your possible items are. You need to know some of the basic language. Obviously, you need to know name, birth, death, just common vocabulary in that language so you can understand what you're reading. Geography is important to understand because as borders change, sometimes the records were kept in the original place or with the original country. Other times they were moved. So you kind of have to understand where were borders when and how did that affect what kind of records were kept. You need to know what kind of repositories are available. Can you get access to a library, to a church, to a meeting? Do you have access to those? Where are the records kept? You need a way to keep it all straight, and you need to know when and where to seek help. As I said, this is just a real basic idea of what you need to know and when. So the first thing is you need to know about geography changes or boundaries. So the example I gave was Poland. And where was Poland in 1880, 1940, and 1990? During those years, the borders of Poland changed. And if you were in certain areas, you may not have been in Poland. You may have started in Poland, ended up in Germany, and then you were back in Poland, or Russia, or a number of other countries. So you have to understand where they were at certain times in history. And if your family came over, let's say in Poland during the 1940s, it may not really matter so much in the 1880s because you're not researching then, but you need to understand where the borders were, especially when you were researching. You need to understand government changes, who is in charge. Again, with the example in Poland, during different times, Germany was in charge, the Polish were in charge, the English were in charge, and I believe at some point in time the Russians were in charge. So documents you're looking for may or may not be kept in any of those languages. And it would determine where the records were kept, where they kept at a local level, a state level, a federal level. So you need to know who was in charge when. Social changes, if it changed, for example, like Catholic records are usually pretty good with births, deaths, baptisms, marriages. But if it changed from being Catholic to Protestant, the record may be kept in a different place. They may be not kept as accurately. So you kind of have to understand what was going on in the time as well. You have to understand if the government or the church was in charge of records. For a while, in some countries, the church was in charge of documenting when people were born and died and all that kind of stuff. And others, it was the state that was in charge of it. And when did this change? Because that could affect where you look for your records and who you need to talk to. And what wars or conflicts may have impacted available information. Obviously, in Poland during the 30s and 40s, during World War II, there may not have been a lot of records kept, or they may have been destroyed. So these are just 5 key points to keep in mind when you're researching, and you need to be kind of familiar with your area. Next, you need to know some basic language. You may need to find words in multiple languages. The language may have changed. Like I was giving the example of Catholic Church records. Originally, they were kept in Latin. Then, for a while, it was kept in the common language of the people of the parish, or it was whoever was in charge of the area at the time. So, in the same congregation, over a span of, say, 100 or 50 years, even, you could have records both in Latin, the language they were speaking, and whoever was in charge of them at the time. So, you need to understand you may have multiple languages, even though you're looking in one country. You need to know relationship names, such as what is the word for parent, uncle, mother, father, grandson, granddaughter, brother, sister, all of those words that you may come across, and the variations mother, mom, godparents, grandparents, dad, all of those nickname type things you may have as well. And geography words. Now, I understand in every country, towns and cities and villages may be called different things, but you need to know what those were, as well as churches, parishes, and you need to understand how their area is broken down. Like here in the United States, we have cities or villages that are inside a county, that are inside of a state, that are inside of the United States. You need to understand how that works in other countries so you know where to look. And when they're explaining where records are kept, you know which level to go to. You need to understand the different languages, how dates were written. A lot of times, especially in church records, I found they have the year of the Lord and then they write out 1842 instead of just writing 1842. So you have to have that, understand what those words mean. So all your months, all your years, and the states and the cities. And I'll show you here in a little bit, I have like a little spreadsheet that I keep that has my common words on it and what they are in the languages that I'm researching. Geography, as I say it, you need to know how everything is set up, whether it's a state, province, region. Physical geography, such as rivers and towns, these are things that usually don't change. So if they were on the border of the Rio Grande, the river is probably not going to move a whole lot, but it'd be easier to find it based on that description versus the historical boundary where it was the edge of the Pennsylvania colony. What repositories are available? Where's the information kept? Did the church keep it? Did the state keep it? Is it at a city level? Is it at a national level? How do I access these records? Do I need to do it online by mail? Does it have to be done in person? And when records changed, so when different countries took over or borders changed, did the records stay or did they move? Sometimes, with the example of my family, they were in Sweden and the border kept moving where they were. So some of their stuff was actually kept locally, but some of the stuff when the border changed was kept at the national level. So I had to look in both places for stuff because some of the records stayed, some of them moved. And is there a national or state archive that you can access? These are all things you can do, look up with like a simple Google search, or researching how to research in a foreign country. This is one way I keep everything straight. So here is one where I've done Italy. So I have just some basic records. So like before 1961, it was not all, or 1861, there was Northern and Southern Italy. They were two totally different countries. So I can remember researching this and thinking, oh, my family's from Italy. It's all Italy. No, it wasn't. I had to look and see if they were from Northern Italy or Southern Italy, and that completely changed where the records were kept. And if they were at the state level or they were more at the federal level. Next, I have the language. So I have a little cheat sheet of words that I was coming across frequently and I needed to know. In my real one, I have more like the whole calendar every month written out, but you get an idea: mother, father, brother, in-laws, and then the months. I have what they call their areas and what our equivalent to them would be. So this is what a town would be. This is what a church would be. And their the big repository that I had access to. And then because everything is in Italian, I had to rely on hopes and prayers and my translations. How can you seek help? So if you've started researching and you start going to these places and you've found you can go to the National Archive and you are just totally stumped, you have no idea what these documents are saying, they've got your family's name in it, and they've got a whole bunch of words you don't know. What can you do? You can message people through Ancestry or Family Search. I've had really good luck of doing this. Again, I try to keep like personal information out of it for my own benefit. Um, but like helping translate, like, hey, I have family from this area. It looks like you're on the same family tree. Can you help me understand what this is saying? There are a bunch of Facebook groups and pages that specifically work in researching in the area. Try Google Translate. It's not always the best, but at least it can get you in the ballpark most of the time. Look for other online groups that are researching about the area you are. Library materials, we have a lot of information about the history and languages of different countries. Check us out for that. YouTube has different ways to research and to translate and to find these different types of records. There's podcasts, and use your fellow researchers. Reach out and get some help from people who are researching. I found most people who are doing genealogy are more than willing to help each other. And if you just ask, you can hire personal researchers in other countries. Again, that's going to cost you money. I prefer to start and at least find the generation that immigrated and where they were from, just to kind of get an idea of that, yes, they were actually there. So usually this is enough to help me find the resources I'm looking for, the birth records and things like that. So hopefully this gives you guys some ideas of ways to begin your research in the old country of your choice. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email and I will see you next time.